Camp Alexo is a summer camp located west of Rocky Mountain House and about 20 or 30 kilometers east of Nordegg on Highway 11 in Alberta, Canada. The site offers a variety of summer programs aimed at kids and teens aged 7 to 17. Over the years, there have been numerous sighting reports in the area around the campsite of a big, hairy hominid. Numerous clippings of reports and articles detailing sightings of the elusive creature can be found lining the walls of the main cabin. Even legendary Bigfoot researcher Renee DeHinden investigated the location in 1988. There is a cemetery located near the campsite. Down a hill past the boys' cabin, you will come to a set of railroad tracks. They lead to an old cemetery. It's on the south side of Highway 11 along the North Saskatchewan River. The graves in the cemetery range from 1800s to the 1900s. There's also a tower near the area. September 1993, a group of campers staying at Alexo set out early in the evening to do a little night hiking. They had all heard about the old graveyard in the woods and wanted to check it out. It didn't take long for them to find it, and they spent about an hour checking out the various grave sites in the surrounding area. It soon began to get dark, so the group collectively decided it was probably best to head back to camp. While they made their way down the tracks, the group was shocked when one of the girls in the back let out a scream. They turned around to see that her flashlight was pointing up into the tower. There was something there. I wasn't ready to see what I saw, and to this day my hair stands on end when I tell this. But on top of this tower, which itself was about 40 to 50 feet high, stood this creature. We all shined our lights on it. It proceeded to jump off this tower, claimed the witness, who went by the initials RC. When it raised its arms to jump off, you could clear as day see the hair hanging from its arms. But what gets me is how it could jump off this tower like I was jumping off a 1-foot-high curb. The creature landed on the ground and proceeded to charge off into the forest. They could hear trees breaking and cracking as it ran. Quote, all of a sudden there was silence. Then about a minute later, there was this loud, eerily high-pitched scream that just went right through you, unquote. Needless to say, the group raced back to the camp. BFRO investigator Adrian Erickson looked into the case, speaking with two of the witnesses who went by the initials RC and IB, who were both 16 at the time, as well as the manager of Camp Alexo. He discovered that the group that night consisted of between 14 and 20 people, all of whom saw the creature. He also noted that there was a lingering odor and that the creature, according to RC, was large and did not appear to have a neck. Regarding the tower it jumped from, the tower was in fact wooden cribbing along the railroad that was originally used to load coal, and that, depending on where the Sasquatch was positioned, that it likely jumped between 20 to 25 feet to the ground, Erickson wrote in his report. RC remains adamant about what he saw. Quote, I know it was 10 years ago, but I know what I saw, and until the day I die, I will say it was him, unquote. He was referring to, of course, Bigfoot. In June 1998, another camper would have a terrifying encounter with a large, hairy, bipedal creature in the forest around Alexo. The witness, who was 9 years old at the time of the sighting, recalled that it was her first summer camp at Alexo. She had only been there for 2 days. Around mid to late afternoon on a warm and sunny day, she and some other campers were in separate teams playing the wide game, a game in which the camp's attendants are stretched out across the camp's entire boundaries. At some point, the witness got lost from the group of people she was with. Quote, I was searching for them and running through the woods between the Pioneer cabin and the Webster cabin when I tripped and fell over a log, unquote. As the witness got up, she looked into the trees and observed a creature that science says does not exist. Quote, I noticed it as I was getting up. It was very tall, with this dark matted brown fur. The face looked almost human, but with a very wide bone structure, slightly extended pinched nose, and a wide mouth. He, I think it was a he, was standing upright with this very large hand holding onto the tree next to him, unquote. The entire encounter only lasted a few seconds as the witness screamed in horror. The creature merely walked off into the forest. Quote, I kept screaming and stared into the place where he had just vacated for a bit longer before running until I found a path and came to find my group at Pioneer Cabin, the southernmost cabin, unquote. Blaine McMillan of BFRO spoke to the witness over the phone and found out that, similar to the 1993 encounter, the creature left a nasty smell in its wake She was also amazed at how the creature moved. Despite its powerful legs, the creature seemed to move with a certain grace and elegance. This was something that surprised her. Possibly the most disturbing encounter to happen at Camp Alexo occurred in 1985, 3 years before Renee DeHinden arrived to do his own investigation of the camp area. It was late in the year, 1985. 6 hunters were set up deep in the woods not far from the graveyard in which R.C. had his encounter. It was their first night out, and they were sitting around the campfire chatting. They heard something screaming in the forest, but they brushed it off. Whatever it was, it continued hollering for a good portion of the night. The men had their rifles and were prepared for any problems that might arise anyways. The next morning, the men investigated the general area in which they thought the screams were coming from, but they found nothing. They spent the remainder of the day hunting. When they returned to the camp, they had a number of kills. By the time they finished hanging and skinning the animals, they were exhausted and decided to go to bed. Within 10 minutes of laying down, they began to hear the screams again. Quote, "There was 4 of us in the big 5th wheel and 2 of them in the camper, which was maybe 15 feet away. Anyways, the guy who owned the 5th wheel was sleeping closest to the door, and we could hear this thing getting louder and louder. It was getting closer," unquote. Whatever the animal was that was making the noise, to the witness, it sounded as if it was walking right inside the camp. Quote, "It finally sounded like it was right outside the window looking in at us when the guy who owned the 5th wheel jumped out with his rifle loaded. I was half asleep, but I remember him yelling and then hearing 3 gunshots, then hearing some really loud screams, twice as loud as we had heard before," unquote. When the man re-entered, the witness recalled that he was shaking from fright. He told them that he had seen a Sasquatch. He described it as 7.5 feet tall and hairy. After he shot at it, it ran on 2 legs back into the bush. The next day, even though it had rained during the night, the men did manage to find tracks in the mud. Quote, "They did look too big for bear tracks, and they were long and narrow, like a person's. But you just couldn't tell, and of course I had no camera. This was in 1985. Anyways, that morning the guy packed everything up and went home, and to this day, he will never go back in there," unquote. The witness continues to hunt in there even today, but admits the place creeps him out. Quote, "I have hunted in there after for deer, elk, and chickens. Whenever I am walking in there, I am always looking over my shoulder. You just get the feeling like something is following you. I don't know. I have hunted in a lot of places, but never feel anything like I do there," unquote.